It's okay, happy Pride.
Hello, Sunshine, and welcome back to another episode of HeartablazE podcast. I'm your host, Timmy, and today's episode is quite interesting. There's a few different things to talk about, but it is obviously revolving, as always, one particular subject, or more so, I should more so say an event. So I'll preface by saying that the event is called Incognito Art Show. It's a very big mouthful, especially that word. I don't know why. It just seems like I stumble on it all the time. But there's a few things I want to talk about. One of the first things I want to talk about is how funny it is. So this season, I've been able to obviously take a break in between. It's the first time I've done 2 seasons in 1 year, or about to attempt a second season in 1 year. I guess like I have been working really hard. So, producing 50 episodes, it's quite a lot to watch through. And I don't expect everyone to be watching only me or like all of my episodes all the time. You know, you take a break in between sometime. At least that is for me with podcasts. So the funny thing is with this season, I've been able to schedule a lot of things, which I have done in the past here and there. So I'm pretty experienced with that. And that's another thing I want to talk about, which is kind of like you gain experience through learning different sort of little learning curves, and eventually it contributes to something bigger. And that's a very, very good, this episode is a very, very good example of that. But anyway, the other thing that I wanted to talk about first is so the first episode of the season, as you know, is Soccer to Me, the interview. And I really want to do that one because one, he was always pretty big, and I think I just hadn't completely known about it when I kind of, when you first start something, you go in naive, and then the more knowledge you have, the more you kind of rationalize and try to logically approach everything. And that was a good thing. And I shot my shot, and he said yes to the interview, and that was literally like the first time I had kind of like jumped on Zoom and tried to use my Yeti mic, as you can see there, that piece of vintage, and my laptop, which is now already dead, to do the recording. And that interview in itself was incredibly awesome. It really helped me define and know like what I really was passionate in, and that I had some sort of like expertise in that area, or at least like a good, I guess, eye for what kind of questions to ask, what made it feel like my type of interview. Like for me, an interview with a music artist always has to be one very centralized around their music work, really diving into sort of like their upbringing and how big of a music role it played, the origins, but also like looking to the future, kind of looking into positive things like, if what would be your dream venue, who would open like for you, who would you want to collab with, with songs, do you have song ideas, or like do you have like things you want to explore, things like that. Now I try to take different angles for different kind of artists, trying to make it all more personable towards one person. It's kind of how I go with like dates as well, like romantic things. I try to make it personable. I don't really like recycling date ideas on other people, which does make it very, very challenging. Anyway, so the funny thing about this is we've actually come, it took a long time. I kind of messaged him here and there throughout the year, like maybe once or twice so far up till towards June. And he basically was so busy, and he was on tour as well. So like there's so much going on that like how to kind of, especially when you work with music artists all the time, you kind of get it. So I just kind of passed off as like, he's too busy, he hasn't checked the DMs, which is a lot of people's cases. A lot of these music artists, generally they're very responsive and respectful about replying to people. It's generally with DMs, it's something that they don't always check a lot, and they can't really respond to everyone, because you imagine like you're on their side as a celebrity, for example, you receive 100 DMs and you're already tired after a whole day of events and like booking things, and you also have time for personal like things like family, your partner. It's challenging. So take that with a grain of salt and don't take it too personally if you're a content creator, and just kind of keep trying. And, if it's really important to you, just give it some time and then just keep on trying. And that's how I secured a lot of the other ones that I've been doing, like Ryman Leon, as you see on the channel. I've also interviewed him once, and he agreed to do a second interview too after basically almost 2 years as well. Which is the time that I've had with Soccer to Me. And I was his first interview for, podcast interview for Ryman Leon. But he's nonstop going on tour. So the time he gave me when he was like freeing up was March. And when it came back around, we kind of almost got into discussing it, but then he kind of went into busy mode again. So I'll probably give it another shot this month. A good thing if you're doing like stuff like me, I keep a list of, basically I started keeping track of it to help with, because the projects are only getting busier and busier. So what I've done is I've started a note where it says interviews that have interviews that I want to message, essentially. I forget what it's called. And then the other one side by side to it is interviews that have been green lighted. And then you could use I love using like the green and the gray checkbox emoticon. So the gray emoticon essentially would be used for those that are kind of like being green lighted, but not like quite actually scheduled. And then the things that have completely actually gone into motion and just waiting for the scheduled day would be the ones that I put green light into. I also started another one, rather than just relying on like my sort of like, I have a note that I actually schedule things properly rather than using the calendar. I just find it's a lot easier to add a lot of tasks to the day without kind of looking into the calendar app. I just think it's a bit more complicated. Anyway, I think this is more flexible and it's easier to check off stuff. But I also found that it's much easier. So I started it within the last month, another note where it basically is like, I guess for like the new season, it just says like EP schedule, and then just kind of tracks the actual dates and episodes. So I know which one to order, sort of also edit in order, like according to shoot days. So I have like the green mark or next to it if I've already shot it, and then like I'll have like the number next to it, meaning edit 1, edit 2, edit 3, so I know which order, and I schedule them. So for example, right now you're probably watching this is I think episode 3 of the season, and I think it's 3 or 4, and I've already done episode 2. Yeah, I think this is episode 4. I've done episode 2 and 3, and 1 I'm still waiting because of the interview. Anyway, so with the interview, back to the whole thing, classic ADHD behavior, essentially. So with Soccer to Me, we ended up getting into the discussion of it. He suddenly replied when I kind of gave him a message. I think it was like the week before the last. And we were supposed to jump on an interview. Just realized I'm supposed to be holding this way around. Anyway, so we jumped on we were scheduled for an interview, and then I got sick. So we had to reschedule that. And then on the second time in the same week, very, very unfortunately, and we have such a big time difference, so scheduling can be very hard. And then I was like trying to make space. So I was rushing editing because I had so many shooting going on. I was flat out exhausted. And, for someone who doesn't always like has easier time sleeping, of course I had to have like a time where I'm like desperately wanting to nap. So I was like, look, I'm going to try to recharge a bit so my brain functions a bit better. So I set a timer for 1 hour, and then that left me with at least 2 hours and a half to like kind of edit and do things and set up for the night's interview. If you're tired, set more than one alarm. I slept right through it, woke up at 6:45. My interview with him was Australian EST time at 6 p.m. At 6:11, he had messaged and said, well, actually at 6 o'clock, he was like, all right, are we doing this? And at 6:11, he was like, oh, okay, looks like we're going to have to leave this again this time. And I woke up in a frantic, checked the time, frantically apologized and tried to kind of explain so that things didn't seem all shit. And he obviously was just busy, but when you're on this kind of side in this situation, in those shoes, you just think, oh my God, he hates me. Anyway, so he did eventually reply, and he was just very gracious about it. He said, look, this kind of stuff happens. It does happen to people. He said, I totally understand. And then gave me another timing. Now, the funny part, though, comes today. I had a busy morning. I kind of like, the only downtime I had was basically the time I was eating lunch, which was late. It was like 3 or 4 o'clock. And I was eating, relaxing, doing some charging, and then kind of getting things ready, then started setting up, getting changed, all that kind of stuff. The place is like super tidy, and everything's charged to full capacity. At the light changed because I was gonna go with like the color, which was orange, even though it's kind of color for the podcast, but for him it kind of represented like You Are My Fire, the icon for that album cover. Anyway, I was going to check with him at the beginning of the podcast, just to see what his favorite color is. I've decided to make that the neon light thing for like the channel, just change it to like every interviewer's favorite, or like whoever I interview, their favorite color is, just to make it a touch more personable, Anyway, so 5:30 comes around. I was actually doing some clearing of storage, about to kind of finish up this other episode that I was editing, but I was like, oh, let me just kind of like put it in unlisted on YouTube first as storage and delete all the stuff, so I have extra room in case the interview runs longer and needs more data or like storage space. And then he messaged and he was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I know we like planned for tonight, but I actually forgot and I had already made plans. So I don't know, in the way he said it, I don't really know which one came first, but essentially I was just like, that's totally fine. It's kind of like I was building up to that moment, but I can't really complain given I'm someone who had that twice occur to him. And I said to him, it's just kind of funny how life kind of finds its way to kind of get back to you with these kind of things. So it's very, very hilarious. Anyway, so he's out to like enjoy something fun, which was all the more reason to let him do that, knowing how hard he works and how busy he is, and how nice he was. Like, he made such an impression on me, like as one of the first artists I interviewed. Very much similar to all the other categories of like all the other artists I've met so far in this podcast job. Nothing but short of like incredible work ethics, incredibly like persistent and hardworking, and loving, very kind and very sort of personable people, and exceptional music, all just kind of like the best package essentially. So I'm very, very lucky to be working with these people. So I do really look forward to working with him. Not to make this too much of a rant, but it has been like almost 12 minutes of this. The other last thing I wanted to mention was that learning curve. So a good example is basically that at one stage I realized my phone storage will very, very quickly run out. And that time I wasn't doing a lot of ahead of time schedule. Right now with season 2 coming up, by the end of season 3, I was approaching this stage where I could flesh out like a whole week worth of shooting. So I could be like, okay, I've got, say like this festival on Tuesday, I'll shoot that. And then on the night, maybe there's something else, I could go to that. The next day I could do another event, maybe take a break in one of the days, and it'll be like a full-on editing day and like up scheduling. And then maybe I'll do promo shoots. I'll do like, some other shorts ideas. And then I'll also have like, my art for merch art designs for Eli. And I'll also take on some other projects sometimes. And, there's other things that also go on. And it gets very, very quick, like to the stage of running out of storage. And then you kind of sometimes hit that wall where you have a video ready to upload, but you've unfortunately actually run out of space. And then you're like, shoot, like I can't delete anything because a lot of the other stuff is all raw footage for the next episode and so on. Anyway, so I very quickly found out that it was very easy to actually just upload things to like little clips up to YouTube, because 1, you can leave it going and you can do other things, and 2, you can do unlisted, and that still allows you to put it into websites to download it. And also don't bother with signing up the premium for downloading things if you want to store things this way, the way that I'm doing it. Also, Android makes it very, very difficult apparently for like USB device kind of like plugins to like store stuff. Like it makes it very complicated. I looked it up and then thought it would be a surefire way to get extra storage and make it nice and easy to kind of access and carry around, blah, blah, blah. And no, it didn't turn out to be that case. So, it's fucked. in short terms. But yeah, so like I just realized that was a really good method, and that's what I had to do with the Incognito show, because I've very quickly learned that some events that carry over for a long time, and this will be coming up with the Rekindled Lounge, which I'll talk about at some stage as well. That's an event run by a council in one of the suburbs, and it has activities over like a whole week. So it made sense to, obviously, if I want to do it as an episode, to experience all the events and cover all of the events before I make it into an episode. So like things like this, it can kind of get in the way of other episodes editing process. So being able to find a place to store and re-download without losing like quality, or like having it being like a very complicated process and make it pretty streamlined, was a really, really good thing to learn. Henceforth, what I mean by learning curves, contributing to something further down the line, you just never know. So hence why, like the podcast representation, learning things and keeping an open-minded attitude about being curious about things really, really can benefit you. And the podcast is just like a great representation for that. I used to do baking videos. That eventually led to baking in general, actually learning the course. That eventually led to making a book. And then all my art skills here and there, picking up back and forth when I was growing up, going to art school, all of that eventually led to kind of doing designs. And then sometimes I still get money off of some designs I left on Redbubble. This YouTube channel that was a baking channel wasn't that popular, but it was doing pretty good. That one person recognized me when I was still doing cafe work. But then once it turned into this podcast, it completely took off. Is just like a wild understatement. And again, I owe great thanks to you guys. And, I have so much confidence in this channel because of you. I mean, I do firmly believe in the concept, and I have become better and better with every single opportunity that I've taken, and with every sort of person I met. For example, Brezie is always a great inspiration. He has a lot of shorts and reels where he talks about his thoughts and his plans, how he engages things, and he's very creative with his sort of approach with music, and that often inspires me. And the same goes for all the other artists in so many different ways. Anyway, let's move on to the real thing. Thank you for sitting through that. I just thought it'd be really cool to share, and it's like in retrospect, because all these things are kind of you never know how it works behind the scenes. And I thought it'd be interesting to show that how a podcast can really work. I also recently found out I average about 16 hours per day over about 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week, depending on how many shoots and how many things are going on in Sydney. In normal terms, usually a lot. But not everything's interesting, and not everything's something I want to attend. We all have our limits. Anyway, so back to Incognito Art Show. It's a really cool thing that, again, Instagram is a great place to find things, especially if you know how to tailor your algorithm, which isn't very hard. And it popped up on my feed, and I was like, oh, it's a free event. And I was like, and I do want to pursue my art stuff more. And it basically says, so essentially sign up for free, then they'll mail you a little package. And the envelope will include 3 pieces of white sort of cardboard-ish textured small, I guess, is that A5? Smaller than A4, kind of blank canvas papers, as you might call it. And on the back, it has a list of a form essentially that you fill out. Now, the idea is you can pretty much do any kind of media. You just have to obviously list what you use, and you create 3 different pieces of art. You would title them, you would name your details that they ask for on the back, and then you would also kind of give them sort of your Instagram handle or whatnot. Pretty simple form, not a lot of details. And what would happen is you put it back in the plastic sleeve that they provide, and then you would put it back in the envelope, and it's free of charge to return because the envelope is paid for doing that already. And you would send that over the next course. You have about 2 months to do that, 2 or 3 months. So it's a pretty big chunk of time. And they're not very big artworks. And what the show does is they'll take that, and then when it comes to, in this case, 24th of June, at Carriage Works here in Sydney, they have a gallery, and they also have one in Brisbane, and they also have another gallery in Townsville. And there's 3 locations. It seems like the way I see it, you have 3 works, and each one of those, to create diversity, I guess, as well, each work goes to a different location from one artist. And I thought that was just kind of up to chances, I guess, but it became very clear, especially with the coding and stuff. So it would be displayed as is on the day with the real artwork, and they just have sort of like a big board, as you'll see later on, with footages and all the artwork side by side pretty much next to each other. And you would carry a little cart, like a little basket, I should say. Very cute, actually. And you just go there, and they'll have like volunteers in green shirts and the uniform, and they'll kind of be floating around, and essentially you say like, I love this artwork, I would like this artwork, and they would take it off for you so you don't damage stuff, and you pop it in your cart, your basket, and then you go to reception at the very end when you've decided you've gotten everything you want. Each artwork all standardized at $100, and the $100 will go to charity, and you will get notified by email once your artwork has been sold. I'm pretty confident my stuff is pretty good, and it's quite unusual, and it's quite specific, niche, but I feel like so 2 of my artworks are Sam Tompkins themed, very on brand, if you know me, and one is kind of about me and my identity, like identity as a person in general, I think is the theme there. Yeah, and like, I mean, the art techniques itself aren't like super crazy, but you know, the idea was more like the concept itself. I haven't received any email yet about it being purchased, but it's only just started its online sales now. So we'll see how that goes. But that's the general idea, and I thought it's great. It's for the donation goes to disabled artists, so in a way kind of like funding some kind of educational purposes, which is really great. And you know, I've been wanting to kind of become more part of like charity work and using this community in the long run when it's big enough and when people are more able to engage and more active, like we can do more sort of good things for the society, I guess. Not to fully become a kindness influencer, that's like a whole different set of skills, but I think, you know, people like Jacksepticeye I used to watch a lot for gaming. I just kind of drifted out of YouTube after a while because I think I was burnt out over watching that much of it. I've kind of recently gotten back in, especially with like watching Sam Tompkins music videos and stuff. One year just got blocked. That's super weird. So, you know, like he is an incredibly like animated, loud, I can relate, but soft-hearted person, and he's always first to jump on when like something needs like his attention for charity, and he'll do streams where he raises a huge amount of money and always makes incredible donations. And you know, I think like that's what like a really good community, a really positive community can do. You can have a lot of fun, you can be unhinged, and you can be really open-minded, accepting, but you can also like pull your efforts together and really do something great, especially with the world that we are in today. 2026 has been a crazy wild ride for Americans, you know, and a few other countries who have been, you know, unfortunately affected by their leader. And, you know, I think all things drastic and negative do sometimes happen because it's a matter of time where things had to happen to kind of become better. It's kind of like things like addiction. Shit will hit the fans in like the best way to describe it, I guess. Shit will hit the fans before things get better. You kind of have to just ruin everything and start on a clean slate. And I think most people will agree, not to talk about politics, but like that country might need something like that, unfortunately. And it's just unfortunate that the people who have nothing to do with like having to like run the system, and who are the ones who actually work and help uphold the system, are the ones that have to suffer the consequences. Anyway, so I have some documented footages, and I'll probably narrate as necessary as we go, and we're going to work through sort of like my different footages I've collected throughout those months of creating the art, and also, you know, receiving the stuff and sending it off, and also finally visiting and seeing the artwork shown in a public space in a gallery where people don't even know who I am. And hopefully that would be really cool. Things like this, I think you never know, like my subscribers spiked in June out of nowhere, and I've done a few different events, and I just honestly cannot tell where they're coming from. And there's a few things that I suspect, like for example, I did an incredible interview with Daniel from the company Ultra, and I've been trying to get in touch with him because I don't know if I deleted his email by accident one time when I didn't like see it properly, or I was fever dreaming. But I don't have his contact, and it's been a hell of a difficult time trying to contact anyone from any of like the events organizational kind of like networks. Been sending out emails and haven't been able to get in contact with him. But I have noticed that email comes up pretty easily every time you look for anything sort of slightly more major for the food and hospitality week. And even Meta AI kind of quotes me as like I'm a really, really like official thing. So it was an interesting thing to come up, you know, when you're searching for more details, but the only most detailed thing that you find is your own work. Says something, I guess. It was a good ego boost, to say the least. But yeah, I really hope I can get in touch with that because it was really cool of them to offer, like, to share the company's story with me. I'm just a bit gutted that I kind of messed it up. I have a feeling I definitely deleted an email somehow, somewhere. No, I know which email. Anyway, but yes, so that happened. But yeah, enjoy, and I hope you I guess comment down below and tell me, or in the poll, tell me which one was your favorite artwork, and then in the comments maybe talk about what part of the artwork made you feel that it was your favorite. And would you join Incognito Art Show? I don't know if it's held annually. I feel like it would be. Seems like a great cause, and you know they can't really lose anything from it. They have merch as well if you're interested. And if you're in Sydney, it's really, really nice because it seems like the shows are usually on the weekend. Makes sense. More people can attend. But Carriage Works also has a really nice fresh food market that's quite hustly and bustling, really busy. I didn't even know that there was a little market there. So a lot of good food and some fresh product and bouquets of flowers, blah, blah, blah. And they also have a lot of other shows held in that event, in that venue. So check it out. Anyway, let's move on. Hello, Sunshine. Welcome back to another episode of ABLAZE podcast. So today's the 11th of March, and a little early on, I applied for to be part of an art show. It's free for everyone to participate. You just have to apply before 22nd of March. And it won't be till May or June, which is right now where I'm posting this video, before the show launches. And I decided to wait to post this because it just kind of made more sense to put everything together as a compilation video. But yeah, we just got this in the email. Let's check what it is. Oh, nice. A little sticker. So you can see that came with the Incognito Art Show. But, I have to remind myself to put out the address. And it says, before returning your artwork, you must register your artwork by completing the artwork details form online. Let's see. So basically they gave me 2 pens. I don't know why in my head I thought it was going to be 3. But 2 is good. You can focus on a small amount. It's a letter for sending it back. So you don't really have to spend a dime for this. And I believe if you go, you can look up the show online on Google. They have a website for it, and it explains roughly what they're doing. But essentially, they're doing this for like charity for art. Like I think basically to like help educate other people to create more art. So it comes full circle, which is absolutely amazing. Yeah, and then people like basically will bid at the event. And I really, it's free to go as well, which is amazing. So I'm going to go, and it's got a pretty long time frame for the show, between May and June something. Just looked it up today. Yeah, because I really love to like film my artwork on display with among other artworks in a public space. How cool is that? And how many people get to say that they've done that? And cool, this one has one side thanking you, and then the other side showing you the process that needs to be covered. So you make your artwork, put your artworks on the provided postcard. Just make sure it is an original artwork, no prints. Do not sign the front. It's anonymous, so no signing. Too bad. But you and me will know that I made that. head to our website to register your artworks before shifting it back. Every postcard has a unique code printed in the corner. You will need this when registering the artworks. Ship it back in the prepaid return envelope. The sooner the better. Artworks must be received by the due date. See website. Share on social media. Just remember not to reveal your artwork. It's anonymous. But yeah, interesting. I'm gonna have to think about how I can share the artwork, I guess. I guess what I'll do is I probably won't. I'll have to think about it, but I don't know how anonymous this has to be. But I'd love to share it. In the worst case, I'll just show a video of it when I find it hanging up in the space, and then you would kind of know. It's a quick snippet here, but basically we're starting off with a clip of me doing a bubble experiment for Sam Tompkins' Sincere. I actually don't remember which order I did them in, but this one now I'm going to showcase is the Sam Tompkins Nervous artwork. So Nervous is an artwork based on, it's a snippet of a particular, like sometimes I go through images of him and I just kind of screenshot or save the ones that I find would be really interesting looking in as an artwork. And so I did this one because I really wanted to draw this one at the time. And then the words are lyrics that I stumbled upon, which is like an old video on Instagram. And it's a reel of him performing a song he had written as like a journal entry, singing about his being anxious about his ticket sales at the time for his tour. And it was because it was post-COVID and he knew, like, it listed a bunch of reasons, one of them being sort of like like COVID has made people poor and, people have less to spend, and, his newer artists and, people have a million other artists they like, so on and so forth. It was actually, I feel like it can be relatable in many ways, but also for musicians, I think it must be a very relatable song. And it's just a very good demonstration of how real and how personable he is and how humble he is as a person. He is actually incredibly mainstream and big now, and I feel like I'm surprised not more people know his name, but I'm forever on the fence about, like, I'm always not on the fence about gushing about him, but always in hindsight a little bit on the fence of sharing too much about him, because I'm just like, then his tickets will probably get too expensive, it'll get too well known, and then it'll become harder and harder for me to see his show in the future, which will completely kill me. Anyway, so here I am doing the pencil line art for it, and it's a pretty straightforward process. I usually just follow mostly the image, except kind of add in some of my iconic sort of signature things about my characters. And at this point I was lining and doing all the back, and I was kind of practicing my signature, because I do have an apparel design company of sorts that for stuff I paint and all that. I keep it on Instagram. I haven't been able to update it for a while because I just haven't had any time, and it's gotten less and less more time to do apparel design. But I'm trying to in the process investing in better things that will make it a little bit more sort of long-term wearable art rather than just art on shirts. And here it is, I'm doing the lining process. It's pretty simple. My lining process is usually just using one of those nice pen liners by Stedletter, I think it is. I think it's usually that brand, and usually I do fine art details at 0.4 or something like that, and the thicker outlines, if I want contrast, I do about 1.5 or 1.8. Generally those are the two sizes I find kind of perfect for me. And with this kind of textured paper, it can be a tiny bit glossy of some sort, almost slightly like that. It's very important for these kind of pens to dry as long as you can, so I tend to leave them. It gives me the time to recharge and have a break, so I tend to do them overnight. So the process itself is pretty quick. And over here I have these new markers that I had bought because I wanted to try out acrylic paint markers. So they're kind of like markers and with the same tip, but it's acrylic paint. And it was very interesting using this. The interesting part, I say, is because they are definitely paint. They do not leave pen marks underneath it, like showing through if you were to go over them. So it's a very different process than using like a Copic marker or something like that, where you would just draw and kind of color out the parts and then layer on layers. In this, you have to actually really plan your details, and in some certain circumstances, like for here example, it actually might have been a lot easier if I block out the colors first in like the sweater and then just go back in with the pen liner for texture, if you get what I mean. But I'm not that confident enough in my art skills yet that I kind of freehand those things. So I tend to prefer being able to draw a pencil over it. And I think that would make the process really complicated. Anyway, over here, I treated myself to a day at the time because I had a bit more money. I went to Old School Cafe near Central. Really, really nice spot. Really quite quiet during the week. So I sat down to do Sincere, Sam Tompkins' Sincere, the artwork. And the concept for this art was I wanted to try on the bubble technique. If you don't know, it's basically some soap, like dishwashing soap, some water, put in some color that you want, blow bubbles with a straw, and then let it flow onto paper. Basically, normal paper works best. I think this paper was too thick and the texture is different, a bit too slippery, so it couldn't really grip on. It did create some sort of interesting sort of like, but you probably could have done this with watercolor, which I didn't have at the time and bought shortly after. Anyway, so the concept for this was basically finding a really nice picture of him that was warm in tone and had that kind of warm gesture and making more personable. And then I got some flowers that were either just warmth or like actually in language, for flower language, represented sincerity and purity, which are two qualities I really think are part of him. And I tried to kind of play a little bit with composition and blocking out some spaces like negative space and, you know, all that stuff in this one, just to make it a little bit more interesting, so it wasn't just like a regular celebrity art, you know, because I do a lot of Sam Tompkins art, so every single piece of art I do, I always try to take that chance, because I don't get to do artworks all the time, like whenever I want of him anymore. I don't have that much time, so I try to make each one count, make it like doable, but also and enjoyable, most importantly, but also kind of try to at least have some form of challenge or something different that will provide a learning chance to improve my art skills. So here you can see I was doing like a little, sort of like a little frame to kind of like really make it less blank space, because I felt like there was just a little bit too much space, and this really kind of framed him and make him pop a little bit more, and I really like that. But yeah, look at that mark on my knuckle. That was a big injury. But yeah, so it was really cool, and I learned some new flowers, like that long kind of thorny, almost like a dragon horn looking flower. I thought that was so cool, and I really wanted him to like have that. You can see I'm trying to bubble thing here, and I had to try, I think, like a couple of times until I finally realized I just don't think it works. Works really good on paper though. I tested it on A4 paper, just a regular printing paper first, and it did look pretty cool. See, like if those bubbles stayed, that would have been such an interesting texture. And you can see I edited a lot of these videos ahead of hand. There's so many like missed CapCut outros. I just wish they stopped adding that. It's so annoying. I always have to delete it manually. Anyway, back to the thing and keeping it positive. So this is the third piece of work, and I made it about myself, as a content creator does. Spotlight on myself. Anyway, no, I thought I would make it something interesting. And at the time I was thinking, because I was a lot of this process of doing a podcast and also, you know, sobriety, all those kind of things kind of is a lot about self-discovery and identity. So, and I thought, what could be an easy artwork though? So I essentially took a photo of me sitting on the bed completely butt naked as reference, because I'm not that great with art that I don't need a reference. And I started drawing out like this shelving behind it, and it's a massive shelving that basically just have so many random items that define, I guess, like a more materialistic identity of yourself. And the idea is to kind of like take like your flavor palette, your favorite food, your gaming choices like of devices, and, you know, your like materialistic things like apparel, all these things, and strip them away, and you're butt naked. And it's like, well, you know, how much of this is really you, and if you strip them away, how much of what's left can still represent you? I will 100% be honest with you, and the fact that I still remember that as soon as I saw this part, it just jerked awake in me. shows how much I hated that process. So by the time I finished those two, because I was trying to rush, like really kind of getting it done as like efficiently as possible, because I remember at the time I was really busy with a lot of video editing, and I wanted like to make sure I had like, I guess like, storage space, all the stuff that was like kind of stressing in the background. And it was just so funny. I remember absolutely hating the coloring phase of that because there was so many boxes and so many cupboards and so much detail. Anyway, over here, so we're back at the event. It was so cool to see that many artwork pitted right up against each other. And it was really funny. So I walked to the leftmost aisle thinking I'll zigzag my way through from there. And there was just so many people in every aisle, so it was hard to navigate, and people did not exactly follow, like I thought I was trying to follow like the left side, and then people looking down the right, then zigzagging and following the same directions, same side every aisle. But then when there was a few people in front of me, when I was standing with the leftmost, as you can see there, I already spotted my artwork. I was just like, turn around, and I was like, hang on a second, that's my artwork. And I did research ahead of time, knowing through the code that's provided, because they send you like a confirmation code every time you submit the artworks at the beginning, so you can kind of track it. And the code actually does tell you like which place it's going to. Like S at the beginning stands for Sydney, T stands for Townsville, and B stands for Brisbane. So that's how the coding works. Anyway, so I still wanted to stay and look at all the art, because I thought with such a rare opportunity of seeing this many artists from all different kinds of backgrounds and expertise levels and all that kind of stuff, you really get to showcase. That's Adventure Time, so cool. You get to like really see like all the quick zippers I'm showing you are all my favorite artworks that really stood out to me, like whether it be composition, texturally, and so many cat ones, and and so many different art styles. All of them represented something I could learn, so I just thought it was really, really cool. I didn't stay for like the entire thing because there's just sometimes too many people in a certain aisle, in a certain section, and stuff. But that's it for today, so keep up the sunshine, and I'll talk to you guys in the next episode. Bye.